Hi there, time now for Back Pages tonight here on Sky Sports News, bringing you a first look at the sports stories in the morning's newspapers. Joining us are the Times football reporter Charlotte Dunker and the Mirror's chief football writer John Cross. Welcome to you both. Let's quickly run through the back pages. I'm going to start with the Mirror, who lead on the Europa League semi-finals. Tottenham and Manchester United in action. A glimpse of hope there on the back page. The Telegraph is next as Chelsea seal a sixth successive WSL title thanks to a late Lucy Bronze goal. On the back of the Sun again, the Europa League semi-finals dominate. Manchester United and Spurs in action. Eggs in one basket is the headline. And quotes as well from Ruben Amorim in his news conference ahead of facing Athletic Club, saying that the trophy, the Europa League, won't fix problems, according to the Manchester United manager, with a big summer ahead for him. Let's start back pages tonight with this evening's games, and we're going to start with the men's Champions League semi-final first leg between Barcelona and Inter Milan. Barca recovering from 2-0 down and then 3-2 down to scramble a 3-3 draw against Inter Milan. Extremely entertaining rollercoaster game, a real classic Champions League semi-final. And Charlotte, I guess a lot of the headlines will go to a 17-year-old for Barcelona, Lamine Yamal. What did you make of his performance?
Yeah, it was great, wasn't it? What a game. We were talking before, like it's probably, one of the best games that we've seen in the Champions League this season for sure. I think because Barcelona are obviously favourites to go and win the whole competition. I think maybe people were doing Inter a bit of disservice that not that they couldn't compete with them, but I think a lot of people expected Barcelona to just absolutely batter them. But what a game it was for them to go 2-0 up, and then the character from Barcelona to fight back and then for Inter to come again. But like you say, Lamine Yamal, what a performance from him. 17 years old. If you compare his stats to Cristiano Ronaldo and Lionel Messi at that age as well, he's far ahead of them. He was given his shirt at the end by the club captain to mark 100 appearances. He's 17 years old. Some of the skill, he did lose the ball a few times, to be fair. It wasn't a all-round perfect performance if we're going to nitpick at him, but some of the skill that he was producing. It's a Champions League semi-final. He was playing with so much confidence. It was absolutely ridiculous. He's one of those players that's a joy to watch, and you just want him to get the ball every single time to see what he's going to do next. Yeah,
the young man has tried to play down the comparisons, the obvious comparisons really with Lionel Messi. John, are we going to be talking about this player like we used to talk about Lionel Messi, where you have to see him live before he retires? When you talk about Lionel Messi, in 10 years' time, we're going to say you've got to have seen Lamine Yamal live.
Yeah, I think there's every chance of that, Dave, to be honest, because he's just so young to be imposing himself on such a big stage. That for me is the test of absolute generational talent, of which there can be no doubt that this player is one. I mean, fabulous. The goal in that first half, when he's just kind of almost slaloming on the edge of the box. He's on a one-man mission, or one teenager mission, to kind of just break into the penalty box to get Barcelona back in this contest. You know, they're 2-0 down early on. I mean, it was an incredible roller coaster ride of a game. Absolutely fabulous match. And then he just angles this shot, and it completely wrong foots, you know, some of the Inter Milan goalkeeper. I mean, it was just brilliant. He tried something equally audacious, which was then tipped onto the bar in the first half, and then it's something even more spectacular when he hit the bar with kind of some overarching looping shot in the second. I must also make a word for Rafinha, who frankly is just astonishing. He, on my current list, he's top for Ballon d'Or. I mean, the performances, particularly in the Champions League that he's delivered. He was denied another spectacular goal because it crashed against the bar and then hit the back of the goalkeeper and went in for an own goal. But I mean, the performance levels for a player who was at Leeds not so long back. Barcelona then sort of kind of picked him up, tried to offload him last summer, but he said, I'm not having that, and basically fought for his place. The determination, the mindset, The skill of this player is off the planet. What a player.
Yeah, well, let's get Charlotte's thoughts as well on Rafinha, because ahead of this game, there were quite a few really good preview pieces looking back at the career of Rafinha, how he was locked in the Rennes dressing room as they wanted to keep him, and Leeds were trying to sign him, and Marcelo Bielsa saying that he could run and run and run all day, surviving murder ball, how he stayed behind after training, working hard on his game, and now he's reaping the rewards of that. But for Barcelona to have him, Lamine Yamal, not one but two Ballon d'Or contenders. What about the story of Rafinha as well?
Yeah, it's brilliant for him. I just remember that image of him on his knees, not walking on his knees the whole length of the pitch when he played for Leeds, and it was just that he believed he needed to give back to God, and it was a sort of spiritual ritual that to thank God for the work that he's done in his career. So if he did that while he was playing for Leeds, and I think everyone's watching him thinking, wow, why did Leeds let him go? But I mean, look where he's ended up. But he looks like he could win the Ballon d'Or. His performance was unbelievable. Like John said, he was unlucky not to be given that goal. He also could have had another one as well, couldn't he? So, but if you look at, it's credit to Marco Bielsa as well, because he speaks so highly of him. And if you look at the player he was when he went to Leeds and the development that he went under there, and he's just gone up and up and up since there. So I think people might discredit and say, oh, what was he doing in a team that have now just been promoted back to the Premier League? But the work, the credit does need to go to them for the work that was put in for the development of his career to get him to where he is now. And
just a word, John, on where we think the tie stands right now. Who do you think goes through after that second leg coming?
Oh, look, I think Charlotte's spot on, to be honest. I think a lot of us kind of, probably including myself, actually did into a disservice and kind of thought, do you know what, Barca just nailed them for the final. I just think it's so open, it's so tight. I probably changed my mind tonight. I know as good as Barcelona are, brilliant going forward, and they've got that within their locker, clearly, the eye for the spectacular. But I just think Inter probably showed me tonight that I actually think that I wouldn't mind betting that Inter end up, but you know, particularly as they're now taking the tie back home next week, I think maybe, just maybe, have an edge. And I do think we underestimate and undervalue them as a European force right now. They're going great guns themselves.
Yeah, let's move on. Lots of the papers talking about Chelsea and the sixth successive WSL title that has been clinched, the first for Sonia Bonpastor. The Telegraph leading with that as well. Blue is the colour as Chelsea seal the title. Charlotte, I feel like that outcome for Chelsea this evening was rather unexpected given what happened to Arsenal earlier in the evening, but a terrific result. Maybe, would you say Chelsea maybe not at their best this evening, but they've been brilliant domestically, haven't they?
Yeah, they weren't at their best. Obviously, I wasn't watching that game, but I've read about it. And from what I've heard, Manchester United played really well. And the Chelsea fans are saying they weren't at their best. But that's the making of champions, isn't it? If you can go to somewhere difficult, a difficult away ground, not play very well and score a late goal, which wins you the title, that shows why they are back in that position again 6 times in a row. And what a job that Sonia Bombastor's done there, because to replace Emma Hayes and the job that she'd done after all those years there, she's obviously an icon in the women's game over here. They were very big shoes to fill. They've already won 2. This is the second trophy that they've won this season. They could get a treble. Obviously, they're disappointed that they got knocked out of the Champions League. But again, that was so soon for them to come and pick themselves up for this game, to win such a vital game, and to know that Arsenal result as well, and know what was resting on it. There was so much pressure on those players. They weren't playing their best, but they got over the line in the end, and it's a 6th title in a row for them. And what a season they're having. Even as Lucy Bronze said in that interview that you just played before, she doesn't think they've played their best football domestically in the back end of this season. So what that means for them next season as well, in Sonia Bombastor's second season in charge, if they could get some new additions in, if they can start playing better than they believe they have in the last 6 months, then they could maybe, I mean, Champions League is obviously the next target for them. So maybe they could hope they can go on and win that.
Yeah, John, I mean, the Champions League is the obvious target for Chelsea and the head coach as well. They've all spoken about it down there at Chelsea. That's the target. But domestically, I mean, it feels difficult for them to get even better than they possibly could do. But I guess the hunger will be there given the European ambition.
Yeah, I think that's a great shout. I think it was really interesting to hear Lucy Bronze talking so openly and candidly, really, in the sort of kind of post-match interview with Juliet Farrington there on the pitch. You know, it was a really interesting interview simply because this was the night that they're celebrating. And of course they're celebrating. You know, I'm sure lots of more papers and back pages will pick up more pictures and words sort of as the night draws on. It was quite a late finish there. So, you know, some of the papers done well to get it in first editions already. But I just think that, you know, Sonny Boston was brought in to win European glory, really, because Emma Hayes had done so much for Chelsea in winning 5 consecutive. Then that basically that was the challenge, and Lucy Bonds there was quite open about really sort of saying, look, you know, the first half of the season we were brilliant. Second half of the season, you know, performances may have tailed away a little bit. You know, they're quite honest there and sort of saying the manager will want for sure a little bit more from us next season. We were looking to improve, and so I do think it was a really searingly honest, you know, interview there, because it's all well and good to kind of celebrate the moment, and they deserve their glory. Of course they do. And I'm sure they'll have a good night tonight and reflect upon a really terrific season. But I do think that kind of, you know, as the season has wore on, I do think their kind of, you know, peak has gone really, and it's just a bit of unfortunate timing, because I think at times this season, particularly, they haven't had a sort of an absolute standout player. It's been very much a squad game, and sort of kind of, you know, this year other teams have had spectacular performers really, haven't they? You know, Russo at Arsenal for example, you know, and sort of Man City, and it's just, I think it's been sort of shared by Chelsea, and I think that perhaps, you know, next season I'm sure they'll come back with a real eye on European glory. And I think the heights they've hit at points this season suggests to me that they could do that.
Yeah, and Chelsea clinching a title, the WSL title this evening, and other clubs also looking to end the season with trophies in the men's game. Let's look ahead to the Europa League semi-finals. Manchester United and Tottenham in action on Thursday evening. We'll talk about Tottenham in a bit, but we're going to start with Manchester United away in Spain, taking on Athletic Club, and another, I guess, searingly honest news conference from Ruben Amorim. Trophies often, sometimes clubs are accused of winning trophies, maybe papering over the cracks. But Charlotte, Ruben Amorim has been fairly straightforward in saying that, look, the European trophy, if they do go on to win it, isn't going to solve anything. Is that a good thing that he recognises that?
Yeah, definitely. Because I think, as you said, if there's one thing Amorim's been since he came to Manchester United, it's searingly honest in his press conferences. And he can look at Manchester United's form in the Premier League. They're 14th. They're on course for their worst. Well, it's going to be their worst ever Premier League season ever. So the fact he's right in terms of it won't, well, it says nothing can save the season. It won't save the season. It'll give the players and the fans plenty to celebrate if they manage to go back to Bilbao next month and manage to lift that trophy. Yes, it's like you say, it doesn't paper over the cracks, but it'd be a good day out for them. It's finished the season on a high, a big positive. But Amorim isn't daft. He knows the job that he's got to do at Manchester United is absolutely massive. But part of that job is recruitment. And he knows that by winning that trophy, he will get a lot more money in his recruitment budget, which is going to be absolutely massive for him in the summer. So he knows the importance of winning this competition, but he's not going to come out, even if they win it, he's not going to come out and say, this has been a good season because we've won a trophy. Manchester United are at risk of dropping. If we're being honest, they could finish the league, even further down in the table with their form in the league. It's not been good enough at all, has it? They're 14th. They could risk dropping down to 15th, 16th, even 17th. So for Manchester United to be narrowly above the relegation places, going into the final few games of the season, there's nothing he can say. He can't say that this has been a positive season, because in the Premier League, it's been an absolute disaster. So he'll be hoping for more than one reason that they go on and win the Europa League. But you're right, he's very honest and he's very correct in his comments that he made today.
Other papers as well taking a slightly different line, and you touched on it there, Charlotte, actually around the financial impact and the fact that winning the Europa League will alter Manchester United's transfer budget for the summer. It might well lead them to attracting a different quality of player. John, what do you think about Manchester United's summer plans? Do you think it will dramatically alter the quality of player that they can attract, or is Manchester United not perhaps at the top of some players' lists of clubs they'd like to join?
Yeah, I still think that they have a pull. They have a romantic pull, really, don't they? I mean, look at Matheus Cunha. I'm sure that he had other offers. I'm not completely convinced that he had sort of kind of some of the clubs named. I think he sort of kind of, you know, used a few clubs to kind of push and get a good deal. But I'm sure that other clubs were interested apart from United, and United still have a pull, don't they, to attract a player like that. But I do feel as if it's on two fronts for me, in that basically Man United definitely want a lot of outgoings to bring some ingoings, because they've definitely kind of have to have an element of needing to sell before they can buy, if you like. But also, I think that for a lot of players, getting into the Champions League is a big thing. Playing on the Europe's biggest stage is a massive thing. And that's the carrot, isn't it, for winning the Europa League? Plus also the money, the extra revenue that you can get through progression in the Champions League. So it's massive, really. I do totally get where he's coming from. He's right. I'm sure that the fans wouldn't want to hear anything else. The fans still, let's not forget, absolutely love Amorim. You go to away games and they sing their hearts out for this guy. They're really, really bought into it. They back him. I love the way that United fans, back their managers and sort of kind of give them the best opportunity. That's fantastic to see. But I do feel as if it's a massive... I completely agree. Wouldn't solve everything, but my God, what a big step it would be for Man United if they could get in the Champions League.
Certainly, yeah, and a significant task for them away in Spain. We are going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll take a look at more of the sports stories in the morning papers. As I mentioned, we've spoken about United, and next we are going to take a look at Spurs as reflected in the Sun. Eggs in one basket. You're watching Back Pages tonight, and a warm welcome back as well to the Times football reporter Charlotte Duncan and the Mirror's chief football writer John Cross. We spoke about Manchester United earlier in the show. Let's talk about Tottenham Hotspur and the task facing them in the Europa League semi-final, taking on Bodo Glimt at home in the first leg of their semi. A glimpse of hope is the Mirror back page. And Charlotte, let's come to you first on this one. I mean, Ange Postecoglou has said that this game is bigger than Manchester United winning the FA Cup under Eric Ten Hag, and obviously Ten Hag kept his job after that victory. Do you agree with him that this is a bigger achievement for Tottenham?
I think it's a bad comparison, given Eric Ten Hag probably shouldn't have kept his job and then was sacked in October when they failed to make the right decision in the summer. So it's an interesting one to compare, but I think it would be bigger for Tottenham in terms of it's been such a long time since they've won a trophy. It's been over 40 years since they've won a trophy in Europe, and it's 17 years without any description of trophy. So in terms of that and what it means to the club, it would be a lot bigger. It's obviously a route into the Champions League, whereas Manchester United's FA Cup win was a route into the Europa League. So we're talking a superior competition. But I think ultimately Manchester United last season, from memory, I think they finished 8th, whereas Tottenham are at risk of finishing just above the relegation zone. So it's one of them where it's really hard to compare the two, because if you're comparing season by season, you'd argue United last season won a trophy and finished higher in the Premier League. It's Tottenham winning a trophy and finishing 15th, 16th, 17th, better than that. If it means he keeps his job and that keeps him happy, then I'm sure he'll take it. But I think the consensus from a lot of people is that even if they do go on to lift that trophy next month, that he probably will not be at Tottenham next season. So that's one for us all to keep an eye on.
And he's talked today and also in previous presses actually about people, in his view anyway, trying to diminish Tottenham's achievements by getting to the semi-final and the potential of winning that trophy. Would you go along with that, John? Whether he's talking to the media or other fans of other clubs in particular that he's targeting that comment at, or is he trying to create this kind of siege mentality within the club? Everybody's against us, kind of thing.
Yeah, I do think there's an element of that. I don't think that the siege mentality has worked at all with the dressing room. I think, or the fans indeed. I mean, it was interesting to hear sort of James Maddison talking today, wasn't he, saying that we're 100% and the players behind him. And honestly, all of the indications that I get, I think that's true. Listen, some of the players are a little bit disaffected, but I think they're disaffected generally, not particularly with the manager. And look, I actually really agree with Postecoglou on the one hand that I think the Europa League is way bigger than winning the FA Cup. Why? Because I think it's a passport into the Champions League, and that would be massive for Tottenham. Do I think that basically people, tried to diminish deliberately sort of, his achievements, Tottenham's achievements? Well, what I would say is I am staggered. I've never known a Premier League manager read so much of the coverage about him as he clearly does. He literally reads every single word. I mean, it's fascinating for me to see. But you have to separate what they've done in Europe and in the league. For some, you could say, oh, kind of, it's a combination because he's written off the league season to concentrate on Europe. But I'm sorry, Tottenham have been so bad to lose 19 games. That's half a league season in the Premier League. Why on earth would you keep the manager? I really like Postecoglou. We have a bit of a laugh in the press conferences, and there's a great deal of respect. I think he's playing for respect now. But I mean, I must say, I wrote 3 weeks ago that he will lose his job even if he wins the Europa League, and that position just hasn't changed in my mind. It really hasn't moved, because I'm sorry, but why would the club trust a manager who's lost half a season's worth of games lead the club next season, even if he wins the Europa League? It's an impossible situation. Feel a bit bad for him. I really hope he goes and wins it. It would be nice, because I think he's a great guy. I found him quite infectious, but I'm not sure the fans completely would see it like that when you lose so many games and lose them so badly as they did at Anfield on Sunday.
Yeah, 2 managers in differing positions then, Amorim and Postecoglou, going into these semi-finals. As a club, Charlotte, who do you think this is bigger for, this Europa League? Is it bigger for Tottenham or is it bigger for Manchester United?
It's hard because the conversation's been of the 2 crisis clubs, hasn't it, all season? Like, who can have a worse season, Tottenham or Manchester United? So imagine they face each other in the final, then who knows? It's going to be a shootout as to who can have the worst and who can have the best season. I think for both, it's vitally important in terms of the money that we've spoken about, in terms of getting into the Champions League as well. That will make a huge difference for either club next season. It's hard to say who it would benefit more, because I think both clubs and both teams need to win it for different reasons. Tottenham obviously haven't won a trophy for such a long time. Manchester United are looking at this rebuild under Amorim. This could be Postecoglou's big goodbye. Like, terrible league season, but he could go and deliver them their first European trophy in over 40 years. So it's impossible to say who it will be bigger for, because I think both teams and both clubs desperately need to win this trophy.
And John, we've got a minute left to talk about Chelsea, their Conference League semi-final against Djurgården, and all the talk's been about the pitch. What's the issue?
Yeah, Maresca very unhappy with the synthetic pitch in Sweden, particularly from a point of view that he's going to have to sort of, really go for this game. Make no mistake about it, it's European semi-final, but he's risking players against the risk of injury, particularly ahead of a Champions League run-in, if you like. So trying to desperately guide Chelsea into the top 5 to get a Champions League place. So, I mean, you see all the players boarding on the flight to Sweden tonight, and they're all on board, so they're all going to play. So he's really worried about the injury risk, that extra risk, I guess, from playing on a plastic artificial surface. I understand his concerns.
Charlotte, John, thanks ever so much for your time here on Back Pages tonight. Pleasure as always. You can keep up to date with Europa League semi-finals, Conference League semi-finals on Sky Sports News. If you missed any of the show here, there's another chance to see Back Pages tonight at 1:30. And the show is also available as a podcast. Download Back Pages on Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. Join us again on Thursday night when our guests will be The Guardian's Jonathan Liu and Eden Ladyman from the Daily Mail.